Clump foliage is always a good thing to have on hand. Whether decorating miniature bases or terrain, using as bushes or leaves, or simply opening yourself up to a whole new world of overused puns because it's also known as flock. With little more than a sponge and a dream and also about an hour and a half, you too can make more clump foliage than you've ever flocking dreamed of. Let's get into it. First things first, grab a car sponge, a wire brush, a glove, and a small bucket. Grab the sponge and brush and rake the wires along the sponge into the bucket all while wearing the glove. The glove is optional and only necessary if you enjoy keeping your skin on your hand. The bucket is also optional and only necessary if you want to make clump foliage and not just a flocking mess. This process took roughly 20 minutes and about 6 hand cramps. Don't worry about the big chunks as they can be dealt with later. Once done, grab a cake pan and a strainer. Use the strainer to sort out all the sponge dust while picking out all of the largest pieces and setting them aside. This process is a lot easier if you have access to fast forward technology and can turn about 20 minutes into 10 seconds. Put all but the dust back into the bucket and use one of those cool transitions to come back to the desk. Dump the clumps and grab an empty container for the greatest snack in the whole flocking world. Start tearing up all the largest pieces into the rough size you'd like. Scissors don't work well for this process because they make clean cuts, and for clump foliage, rough tears work better. Once done, set that aside and grab 3 or 4 of the grossest containers you own, some water, and a soon-to-be-abandoned stir stick. I'm going to make a few different colors of flock, starting with Apple Barrel's English Ivy Green. Mix that with some water into the container and stir until mixed. Next, I'm using Nutmeg Brown to emulate dirt and old leaves. Now that soon is now, I'm abandoning the stir stick in favor of a paintbrush. Thirdly, a mix of Diva Pink and watered down Barn Red will hopefully mimic cherry blossom leaves to be made in the future. Once the colors are mixed to a consistency slightly thicker than water, grab the foil-lined baking sheet that your wife was going to use to make dinner and set that aside for yourself for later. Put on your laziest Firefly cosplay and bring back the paint. Sprinkle in the sponge like you were preparing a slightly more flavorful bowl of Vitamin King. Mix the foliage into the paint using a stir stick for about 8 seconds before giving up and using your hand instead. Let the sponge absorb the paint mixture and squeeze it out. Do this a few times and then spread it along the cookie sheet to dry. Grab the other paint and repeat the process. If necessary, add more paint, but don't worry if some of the natural green from the sponge shows through. Lastly, bring out the English Ivy paint. Mix until there's very little liquid and the sponge looks like some weird species of green cauliflower. Lastly, mix Apple Barrel's Limeade and Holly Green to recreate some of Judge Doom's famous dip. Throw in some brown until it's the color you'd like. In this batch, I'm going to use the small bits I strained out earlier to make a moss-type substance. Take off your glove and admire a perfect recreation of every 90s cartoon cafeteria lunch tray. Put the whole tray in a low oven for some amount of time or until dry. Once done, break up the foliage and put it into separate containers for when you're ready to flock stuff up. Flock is something I don't use that much. Every now and again when I'm decorating a base, putting the finishing touches on a piece of terrain, or trying to bring my expletives down to a more family-friendly level. Now that this foliage has more clumps than the Nutty Professor 2, I'll be ready to flock and roll all night and party every day. Have a good one.